Commander Kang stood on the bridge of his massive warship, staring down at the small human colony below. His blue skin reflected the cold light from the ship's screens as his 4 eyes focused on the settlement they called New Busan. For 30 years he had watched these humans spread across the galaxy like some kind of disease. They built their cities on beautiful worlds, cut down ancient forests, and filled the peaceful silence of space with their constant chatter and noise. The Thalion fleet had been tracking human expansion for decades. Every report made Kang's hatred grow stronger. Humans were reckless and violent. They fought wars over the smallest things. They polluted planets and used up resources without thinking about tomorrow. They were everything that disgusted the careful, organized Thalion people. Kang's long fingers tapped against the metal railing as he watched the human settlement through his ship's powerful cameras. Down there, he could see tiny figures moving between buildings. Human children played in courtyards while their parents worked in gardens and laboratories. The sight made his stomach turn. These creatures bred so quickly and carelessly, spreading their chaos wherever they went. His second-in-command, a tall Thalion named Vex, approached with the attack reports. "Commander, our scouts have mapped every building in the colony. They have basic defense shields, but nothing that can stop our weapons. The humans have about 800 people down there, including many young ones." Kang nodded slowly. 800 more humans who would never spread their disorder to other worlds. "What kind of colony is this one?" he asked, though he already assumed he knew the answer. Probably another military outpost or mining operation designed to strip the planet bare. "The reports say it's some kind of research station, sir. They're growing plants and studying the local environment. Our intelligence suggests they're trying to develop new farming methods for harsh planets." Kang snorted with disgust. "Research? They probably mean they're finding new ways to destroy ecosystems faster." He had heard these lies before. Humans always claimed their expansions were peaceful, but Kang had seen the results: dead planets, poisoned waters, and the remains of species that could never be brought back. The commander walked to the main tactical display, where a 3-dimensional image of New Busan rotated slowly. The human settlement looked almost pretty from this distance, with neat rows of buildings and green spaces between them. But Kang knew better. He had learned not to trust anything that looked peaceful when humans were involved. "Sir, the fleet is in position," Vex reported. "All weapons are charged and ready. We can begin the assault whenever you give the order." Kang studied the colony one more time. In a few hours it would be nothing but smoke and rubble. The humans inside would be gone, and this planet could return to its natural state. One less human infection in the galaxy. The thought should have made him feel satisfied, but instead he felt only cold determination. This was his duty. For 25 years, he had been cleaning up the galaxy by removing human settlements. It was necessary work even if it wasn't pleasant. Someone had to stop these creatures before they destroyed everything beautiful in the universe. "Begin the attack," Kang ordered, his voice as cold as space itself. No survivors. The first energy blasts lit up the morning sky like deadly lightning. Kang watched from his command ship as bright blue beams struck the colony's defense shields. The human barriers flickered and sparked before collapsing completely. Within minutes, his warships were raining destruction down on New Busan. Kang's soldiers moved like a perfectly organized machine. They had done this many times before. Small attack ships swooped down between the buildings, while ground troops landed at key points around the settlement. The humans tried to fight back, but their weapons were no match for Thalion technology. Through his viewing screen, Kang could see people running in the streets below. Some humans carried children, while others helped elderly residents escape the falling buildings. A few brave defenders fired small weapons at his ships, but their shots bounced harmlessly off the alien armor. "Sector 7 is secure, Commander," came a voice through his communication device. "Moving to Sector 8 now." "Residential area cleared," reported another soldier. "No resistance remaining." Kang nodded as the reports flowed in. Everything was going exactly as planned. The humans were doing what they always did when faced with superior force. They panicked and scattered like frightened animals. Some tried to reach their small spacecraft in the landing area, but Kang's ships had destroyed those first. Within 3 hours, the sounds of battle began to fade. The last human defenders had been silenced, and smoke rose from dozens of buildings. Throughout the colony, Kang's forces moved through the settlement like ghosts, checking every structure and making sure no threats remained. Finally, Kang decided it was time to see the results of their work up close. He took a small transport ship down to the colony's main square, where his soldiers had gathered any remaining equipment and supplies. The smell of smoke and burning materials filled the air as he stepped onto the human-built streets. Walking through New Busan felt like moving through a graveyard. Houses that had been filled with life just hours earlier now stood empty and damaged. Gardens that humans had carefully tended were trampled and broken. Children's toys lay scattered in the dirt, abandoned when families fled for their lives. Kang's boots crunched on broken glass as he made his way past a small school building. Through the shattered windows, he could see tiny desks and colorful drawings still hanging on the walls. Human children had learned and played here until this morning. Now it was just another empty shell. His second-in-command, Vex, approached with a datapad containing the final casualty reports. "The operation is complete, sir. All human resistance has been eliminated. We found some interesting technology in their research labs that might be useful to study." Kang took the pad and scanned the numbers without much interest. The details didn't matter to him. What mattered was that another human infection had been removed from the galaxy, one less source of chaos and destruction spreading through space. He continued walking through the ruins, noting how quickly the human settlement had fallen. For all their reputation as fierce fighters, they had been defeated in less than half a day. Their buildings were poorly defended, their weapons were outdated, and their coordination during the battle had been terrible. "Another successful cleansing," Kang said quietly to himself as he surveyed the smoking remains of New Busan. The planet would be peaceful again now, free from human interference. In time, nature would reclaim this land and erase all traces of their presence. This was how it should be. Kang was making his final inspection of the destroyed colony when he heard it, a soft, high-pitched sound cutting through the silence of the ruined settlement. At first, he thought it might be some kind of alarm or damaged equipment making noise, but as he walked closer to a collapsed residential building, he realized what he was hearing. It was crying, a baby's cry. He stopped walking and listened carefully. The sound was coming from underneath a pile of broken concrete and twisted metal that had once been someone's home. The roof had caved in completely, and debris was scattered everywhere. It seemed impossible that anything could have survived under all that wreckage. "Commander," called one of his soldiers who had been searching nearby buildings, "we're detecting a life sign from this location, something small." Kang approached the collapsed structure and activated his scanner. Sure enough, there was a faint heat signature beneath the rubble. Whatever was down there was alive, but barely. The crying continued, weak but persistent. "Clear this debris," Kang ordered his troops. Carefully. His soldiers began moving chunks of concrete and pieces of metal furniture. The work was slow because they had to be careful not to cause more collapse. As they dug deeper, the crying grew louder. Finally, after 20 minutes of careful excavation, they found a small pocket of space that had been protected by a fallen beam. Inside this tiny shelter, they discovered something that made even Kang's hardened soldiers pause. 2 human adults had used their own bodies to shield a small bundle from the falling building. The man and woman were clearly dead, crushed by the debris they had tried to keep away from what they were protecting. But between them, wrapped in a soft blanket, was a human baby. The infant was a girl, probably no more than 6 months old. She had stopped crying when she heard voices and saw light filtering down through the wreckage. Now she was looking up at the alien faces surrounding her with wide, curious eyes. One of Kang's soldiers carefully lifted the baby from her parents' protective embrace. As he did, a small identification bracelet fell from her tiny wrist. It read, "Hana, daughter of Jin and Minji Park." Kang stared down at the child in his soldier's arms. She was so small, so fragile. Her parents had died trying to save her, using their last moments to create a shield around her tiny body. It was exactly the kind of reckless, emotional behavior that Kang despised about humans. But something strange happened as he looked at the baby. Instead of fear or confusion, the infant seemed almost interested in his appearance. Her dark eyes studied his blue skin and unusual features without any sign of terror. When he moved closer, she reached out one tiny hand toward him, making soft, babbling sounds. "What are your orders, Commander?" asked the soldier, holding her. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kang knew what he should do. His mission was to eliminate all human presence from this planet. The baby was human. Logic dictated only one course of action, but as he stared into those innocent eyes, something inside him hesitated. The child had done nothing wrong. She hadn't chosen to be born human. She hadn't participated in any of the destruction that her species caused across the galaxy. For the first time in his military career, Commander Kang found himself unable to give the order that duty required. "Bring her to my ship," Kang heard himself saying, though he couldn't quite believe the words coming from his mouth. His soldiers exchanged confused glances, but followed orders without question. They had learned long ago not to challenge their commander's decisions, even when those decisions seemed unusual. The transport back to the main warship felt longer than normal. Kang sat across from the soldier, holding baby Hana, watching as she continued to stare at everything around her with those bright, curious eyes. She didn't cry during the flight, even when the ship's engines made loud noises that should have frightened such a small child. Once aboard his flagship, Kang faced a problem he had never encountered before. What exactly does one do with a human baby? His ship was designed for warfare, not childcare. The corridors were cold metal, the lighting was harsh, and everything was built for adult Thalian soldiers who stood nearly 8 feet tall. He decided to keep Hana in his private quarters, at least temporarily. The room was sparse and military, containing only a bed, a desk, and some storage units. Nothing suitable for a 6-month-old human infant. Kang found himself standing in the middle of his own room, holding the baby awkwardly while trying to figure out what to do next. Hana seemed fascinated by her new surroundings. Her little head turned back and forth as she took in the strange alien technology and unfamiliar sights. When Kang set her down on his bed, she immediately began trying to crawl toward the glowing control panels on his wall. "No," Kang said firmly, picking her up again. The baby looked at him and made a soft, gurgling sound that might have been laughter. For some reason, this tiny response made something flutter in his chest that he didn't recognize. Over the next few hours, Kang discovered just how helpless human babies were. Hana needed food, but his ship only carried nutrition suitable for adult Thalians. She needed clean clothing, but the smallest uniform on board could have been used as a tent for her tiny body. She needed constant attention, something Kang had never provided to anyone in his entire military career. The strangest part was how unafraid she seemed to be. When Kang's blue skin caught the light, Hana reached out to touch it with her small fingers. When he spoke to her in his deep, alien voice, she babbled back as if they were having a conversation. Most creatures showed some fear when first meeting. Herr Thalian warrior. But this human child acted as if his appearance was the most natural thing in the world. Late that night, as Kang sat at his desk trying to write his mission report, Hana began to fuss. She had been sleeping on his bed, surrounded by pillows to keep her safe. But now she was awake and making unhappy noises. Kang approached carefully, unsure what was wrong. When he leaned over her, Hana immediately stopped crying and smiled up at him. Her tiny arms reached toward his face, and without thinking, Kang allowed her to grab one of his large fingers with her impossibly small hand. The baby held on tightly, studying his alien features with wonder instead of fear. In that moment, something changed inside Commander Kang. For 30 years he had seen humans as nothing but a plague spreading across the galaxy. But looking down at this innocent child who trusted him completely, he began to wonder if maybe there was something about this species that he had never understood. The first week with Hana was the most challenging of Kang's entire military career. He had commanded fleets through dangerous battles and led troops across hostile planets, but nothing had prepared him for taking care of a human baby. Every day brought new problems that his tactical training couldn't solve. Feeding her was the biggest struggle. The nutrition paste that Thalian soldiers ate made Hana sick to her stomach. She would take one taste and then push it away, crying until Kang felt helpless and frustrated. He tried mixing it with water to make it softer, but that only made things worse. By the third day, Kang was getting desperate. He had never paid attention to what human babies needed to survive, and now he was watching Hana grow weaker. Her cries became softer, and she slept more than seemed normal. The thought of losing her filled him with an emotion he didn't understand. "Dr. Nex," Kang called his ship's medical officer to his quarters. "I need information about human infant. Nutrition requirements." The elderly Thalian doctor examined Hana with professional interest. "Commander, human babies need a very specific type of nutrition for the first year of life. Their digestive systems are much different from ours. This child needs milk from her own species, or a very precise substitute." Kang felt his heart sink. "Do we have anything like that on board?" "Not exactly," Nex replied, running his scanner over Hana's small body, "but I can synthesize something close using our food processors. It won't be perfect, but it should keep her healthy." For the next several hours, Kang watched anxiously as the doctor worked to create a suitable formula. When they finally fed it to Hana, she drank eagerly for the first time since coming aboard. The relief Kang felt was overwhelming. As days passed, Kang found himself changing his entire routine around Hana's needs. He would wake up early to feed her before his morning briefings. During strategy meetings, part of his attention was always wondering if she was safe in his quarters. He even started cutting his evening reports short, so he could spend time with her before she fell asleep. The baby was growing stronger and more active. She had learned to recognize his voice and would smile whenever he entered the room. When he picked her up, she would grab onto his uniform and babble at him in her strange human language. Sometimes she would laugh at things that weren't funny to anyone else, and Kang found himself smiling back without meaning to. One evening, while Kang was reviewing battle plans at his desk, Hana started making excited noises from her makeshift bed. When he looked over, she was sitting up by herself for the first time, clapping her tiny hands together and looking proud of her accomplishment. "Well done, little one," Kang said, and he meant it. He realized that he had been celebrating her small victories as if they were his own achievements. The most surprising change was how Hana had begun to affect his dreams. For years, Kang's sleep had been filled with memories of battles and strategic planning. Now he often dreamed of teaching her to walk, or showing her the stars from the observation deck, or protecting her from dangers he couldn't name. His second-in-command, Vex, had started asking questions about why the commander spent so much time in his quarters, but Kang deflected them easily. He wasn't ready to explain what was happening to him, mostly because he didn't understand it himself. All he knew was that this tiny human had become the most important thing in his world. 2 weeks after bringing Hana aboard, Kang found himself doing something he had never done before. He was reviewing the surveillance footage from New Busan, not to write his mission report, but to understand the people who had lived there. As he watched Hana sleep peacefully in his arms, he wondered what kind of life she would have had if his fleet had never arrived. The first recordings he examined were from the colony's security cameras. Before the attack, New Busan had looked like a peaceful place. Children played in courtyards while their parents worked in laboratories and greenhouses. People walked slowly along tree-lined paths, stopping to talk with neighbors or tend to community. Gardens Kang had expected to see military training or weapon manufacturing, but instead he found something completely different. The humans were growing plants, lots of different kinds of plants. The research facilities were filled with crops that could survive in harsh conditions, vegetables that needed very little water, grains that could grow in poor soil, fruits that could handle extreme temperatures. They were trying to solve hunger, Kang murmured to himself as he watched scientists carefully tending to rows of experimental crops. This wasn't the aggressive expansion he had been told about. These humans were working to help their species survive on difficult worlds without destroying the environment. He found personal recordings too, messages that colonists had sent to family members on other planets. A man named Dong Yun was reading bedtime stories to his daughter over video call, making funny voices for different characters while the little girl giggled from her bed on another world. A woman called Sujin was excitedly explaining her latest discovery to colleagues, showing them how she had successfully grown rice in soil that should have been too salty for any plant to survive. The most painful recordings were from the day of the attack. As Kang's ships approached, parents gathered their children and ran for the emergency shelters. But even in those final moments, the humans weren't thinking about fighting back or revenge. They were focused entirely on protecting their families. He watched a teacher named Hyun-soo helping children evacuate their school, making sure every student reached safety before thinking about himself. An elderly couple, Young-ho and Miran, used their own bodies to shield their grandchildren when their house began to collapse. A group of scientists destroyed their research data, not to hide weapons, but to prevent years of peaceful work from falling into the wrong hands. As Hana stirred in his arms, making soft baby noises, Kang realized something that shook him to his core. Her parents, Jin and Minji, had spent their final moments the same way every other parent in New Busan had, thinking only of their child's safety. They hadn't died as soldiers or enemies. They had died as parents, using their love to create one last moment of protection for their daughter. Kang looked down at Hana, who was now awake and staring up at him with trust in her dark eyes. For 30 years, he had believed that humans were naturally violent and destructive, but the evidence was right here in his arms. This baby didn't have a single violent thought in her head. She was curious, loving, and completely innocent. The recordings showed him families who were just like her, people trying to build better lives, protect their children, and make the galaxy a little bit safer for future generations. They hadn't been spreading chaos at all. They had been spreading hope. For the first time in his life, Commander Kang began to wonder if he had been fighting on the wrong side. 3 months had passed since Hana came aboard Kang's ship, and she had grown stronger. Every day, she could sit up on her own now, crawl around his quarters with surprising speed, and babble in what sounded almost like real words. Kang had learned to understand her different cries: hungry, tired, wanting attention, or just happy to see him, auntie. This particular morning, Kang was sitting at his desk reviewing supply reports when he heard Hana making excited noises behind him. He turned to see her pulling herself up against the side of his bed, standing on her wobbly little legs, while holding onto the blankets for support. "What are you doing, little one?" he asked, setting down his work to watch her. Hana looked at him and smiled, that bright expression that never failed to make something warm spread through his chest. She let go of the bed with one hand and reached toward him, making the soft sounds she always made when she wanted his attention. Then something incredible happened. Hana let go of the bed completely and took one shaky step forward, then another. Her arms were stretched out for balance, and her face was focused with determination as she wobbled toward him across the metal floor. Kang held his breath as she took a third step, then a fourth. She was walking. This tiny human child was walking across his quarters with absolute trust that he would catch her if she fell. Her dark eyes never left his face, and she was smiling as if this was the most natural thing in the world. When she finally reached him, Hana collapsed against his legs and wrapped her small arms around his knee, babbling happily as if she had just accomplished the greatest feat in the galaxy. And maybe she had. Kang carefully lifted her up, and Hana immediately snuggled against his chest, completely relaxed and content. As he held her close, feeling her tiny heartbeat against his uniform, something fundamental shifted inside him. The cold, controlled emotions he had carried for 40 years suddenly melted away, replaced by something so powerful it almost frightened him. Love. He was feeling love for this small human child. The realization hit him like a physical blow. For the first time in his life, Commander Kang understood what it meant to care about someone else more than himself. Hana's happiness mattered more to him than his military career. Her safety was more important than his duty to the Thalian Empire. Her trust in him was worth more than all the victories he had ever achieved. As she fell asleep in his arms, Kang began to think about everything he had believed about humans. They were supposed to be chaotic and destructive, but Hana was neither of those things. She was curious about the world around her, eager to learn and grow, and filled with an innocent joy that brightened every day. Maybe human chaos wasn't destructive at all. Maybe it was just the natural energy of a young species that was still learning how to exist in the galaxy. Like a child taking her first steps, humanity might be wobbling and uncertain, but they were moving forward with hope and determination. The humans in New Busan hadn't been trying to destroy anything. They had been trying to build something better. They had been working to solve problems, protect their families, and create a future where their children could thrive. Just like any parent would do. Just like Kang now wanted to do for Hana. The message from Imperial Command arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning while Kang was feeding Hana her breakfast. She had learned to eat solid foods now, and watching her carefully grip a spoon with her tiny fingers had become one of his favorite daily moments. The communication alert interrupted their peaceful routine with its harsh, official tone. Kang read the orders twice, hoping he had misunderstood something. But the words remained the same. Commander Kang, Imperial Science Division requires immediate delivery of human specimen recovered from Kepler 442b colony. Transport to Research Station Omega-7 for biological analysis and behavioral studies. Highest priority. His hands shook slightly as he set down the message pad. Hana looked up at him with concern, sensing something was wrong. She reached out her small hand and touched his arm, making soft, questioning sounds. "It's all right, little one," Kang whispered, but his voice betrayed his fear. Within an hour, his second-in-command Vex requested a private meeting. The tall Thalian officer entered Kang's ready room with an expression that mixed curiosity with suspicion. "Commander, I've received some interesting communications from Imperial Command," Vex began, settling into the chair across from Kang's desk. "They seem to believe you've been harboring a human survivor from our last mission." Kang kept his face neutral, though his hearts were racing. "What makes you think that?" "Well, for starters, you've been spending unusual amounts of time in your private quarters. Your eating habits have changed. You've been requesting different types of food from the kitchen, and several crew members have reported hearing strange noises from your room at night." Vex leaned forward, studying Kang's expression carefully. "There are also questions about your recent behavior during briefings. You seem distracted, almost softer than usual. Some officers are beginning to wonder if you're still fit for command." The accusation hung in the air between them. Kang had known this moment would come eventually. He had been so focused on caring for Hana that he hadn't been careful enough about hiding the changes in his routine. "And what do you think, Vex?" Kang asked quietly. "I think you've lost sight of your duty to the Empire," Vex replied bluntly. "I think you've allowed sentiment to cloud your judgment, and I think you're about to make a decision that will destroy your entire career." Before Kang could respond, another message arrived on his communication device. This one was marked as urgent and came directly from the Imperial Science Division. Kang opened it with growing dread. The message contained detailed instructions for Hana's transport, including the type of containment required and the specific research procedures that would be performed on her. The scientists wanted to study human development patterns, test their pain responses, examine their brain functions, and determine the best methods for controlling human populations. They wanted to use Hana as a laboratory experiment. Kang felt something cold and terrible settle in his stomach as he read about the procedures they planned to perform. These weren't medical examinations designed to help her. They were cruel experiments that would cause her pain and fear, all in the name of finding better ways to destroy her species. He looked up at Vex, who was watching him with calculating eyes. "You've read these orders, haven't you?" "Of course. And I'm prepared to carry them out myself if you're unable to do your duty." In that moment, Kang realized that 30 years of loyal service to the Thalian Empire had led him to this terrible crossroads. He could follow orders and condemn an innocent child to torture, or he could choose love over duty and face the consequences. There was really no choice at all. That night, while his crew slept, Kang made the most important decision of his life. He sat in his quarters holding Hana, who was playing with a small toy he had made for her from spare ship parts. She looked up at him with those trusting dark eyes, completely unaware that powerful people wanted to hurt her. "I won't let them take you," he whispered to her. "I promise." Working through the night, Kang carefully altered the ship's medical records. According to the new files, the human infant had died from complications related to her injuries during the colony attack. The ship's doctor had tried to save her, but human biology was too different from Thalian physiology. It was a believable story that would satisfy Imperial Command. The hardest part was creating fake evidence. Kang had to simulate medical readings, showing Hana's declining health, write false treatment reports, and even stage photographs of what appeared to be her final moments. Every lie he typed felt like betraying something sacred, but it was the only way to keep her safe. 3 days later, Kang told Vex that the human child had died during the night. His second-in-command seemed satisfied with the medical reports and agreed to send the death notification to Imperial Command. The matter was officially closed, but Kang's real work was just beginning. Using his access to star charts and intelligence reports, he located a small human settlement on the edge of known space. The colony on Kepler 186f was far from any major trade routes and had never appeared on Imperial target lists. It would be the perfect place for Hana to grow up safely. The journey took 2 weeks. Kang told his crew they were conducting routine patrols along the border, while secretly plotting a course toward the remote human world. During the trip, he spent every possible moment with Hana, knowing their time together was coming to an end. She had grown so much during their months together. She could walk confidently now, say a few simple words, and even respond to her name. When he called Hana, she would turn toward him with a bright smile that made his heart ache with love and pride. On their last night together, Kang held her while she slept, memorizing every detail of her peaceful face. He had never imagined that such a small creature could teach him so much about what really mattered in life. The human settlement appeared on their sensors as a collection of simple buildings surrounded by farmland. Kang used a small transport ship to approach the colony alone, leaving his main fleet in orbit, with orders to wait for his return. The humans at the landing pad were surprised to see a Thalian ship, but Kang had prepared a story about finding an abandoned child and wanting to return her to her own people. A young couple named Hyunwoo and Youngmi stepped forward, their faces filled with compassion when they saw Hana in his arms. "She needs a family," Kang explained, his voice rough, with emotion he couldn't hide. "Good people who will love her and keep her safe." Hyunwoo and Youngmi looked at each other, then at the beautiful child who was reaching out to them with curious fingers. "We lost our own daughter last year," Youngmi said softly. "We would be honored to care for her." As Kang transferred Hana to her new parents' arms, she looked back at him with confusion, as if wondering why he wasn't coming with them. But when Youngmi began speaking to her in gentle tones, Hana gradually relaxed and accepted her new situation with the adaptability that made humans so remarkable. From his ship's observation deck, Kang watched as Hana took her first steps on solid ground, walking between Hyunwoo and Youngmi as they showed her to her new home. In that moment, he finally understood humanity's greatest weapon, not their technology or their numbers, but their infinite capacity to love and transform. Even their greatest enemies into protectors, H's like Hana as enemies to be destroyed,